Power is often portrayed as something tied to land, borders, and governments. Yet the real force shaping the modern world exists outside all of that. When you study how money actually moves, you start to notice decisions that no president signs, no nation controls, and no voter ever approves. Markets crash without warning, currencies collapse overnight, and entire economies shift direction because of actions taken in places the public never sees. That is when it becomes clear that the world map is a distraction. The true command over global wealth belongs to a system with no country, no flag, and no need for permission. Understanding this hidden structure is the key to understanding why nations appear powerful but behave powerless. This is where the real story begins. Chapter 1. Every empire in history needed territory to project strength. Yet the empire that dominates global wealth emerged from the moment money itself detached from geography. At first, it was accidental. International trade grew, financial instruments evolved, and capital started moving faster than governments could track. What looked like harmless innovation slowly formed a structure that no one led, but everyone depended on. When banks created offshore markets to escape rigid regulations, a parallel financial universe took shape. Money that used to be tied to national systems now moved through channels that existed in the gaps between nations. This was not planned, yet once it existed, it was impossible to reverse. Governments realized they had built a creature they could not control. Chapter 2. The foundation of this empire is not a king or dynasty, but a network of institutions that operate without borders. These are clearinghouses that validate global transactions, custodians holding assets for entire continents, and liquidity providers supplying credit to markets that never sleep. What makes them powerful is not military strength, but the ability to decide which assets are trustworthy, which debts are acceptable, and which risks can exist. Nations fight wars over land, but this empire wages influence through access to liquidity. Without it, no country can function. Politicians can argue, but markets only respond to the system that keeps their blood pumping. That system does not take orders from presidents. It takes orders from mathematical reality. Chapter 3. To understand the reach of this structure, consider how crises unfold. When the global economy freezes, governments rush to make statements, pass laws, and reassure the public. But the crisis rarely began with them. It often began when collateral lost credibility or when global funding channels tightened. A decision made by an institution with no electorate can trigger a chain reaction that forces nations to act as followers, not leaders. This is why countries with strong economies can still fall victim to forces beyond their borders. The empire decides which currencies survive, not through intention, but through the architecture of the financial system itself. Stability is no longer a political achievement. It is a function of global liquidity supply, governed by a system that answers to no nation. Chapter 4. History shows that every empire develops a signature weapon. Ancient empires used armies. Colonial empires used trade. This empire uses leverage. Leverage expands power without expanding size. With enough leverage, a small movement in one institution can influence markets across the world. It controls money creation not through central banks, but through credit mechanisms that exist outside national jurisdiction. Governments believe they issue currency, yet most of the money in circulation is created by private institutions operating through global networks. This disconnect between who prints money and who actually creates it is the core reason why nations appear to lead, but in reality only react. Chapter 5. One of the most revealing moments in modern history occurred during the global financial crisis. Governments and citizens looked to national institutions for solutions, yet the true problem came from markets that did not exist inside any nation's boundaries. When collateral standards shifted in offshore markets, liquidity evaporated. Central banks intervened, but their actions revealed something deeper. They were not controlling the system. They were supporting it, stabilizing something they did not fully command. This was the moment when the public could have recognized that the financial empire was not a theory, but a structure with real authority. Its rules shaped national policies. Its demands rewrote economic expectations. Chapter 6. The empire strengthens itself through opacity. Not secrecy in the conspiratorial sense, but complexity so vast that most people cannot trace cause and effect. When a currency depreciates, the average citizen blames politicians. When interest rates shift, they blame central banks. Yet the triggers often come from risk models, liquidity thresholds, and global funding costs. These mechanisms operate automatically, unaffected by elections or ideology. This distance between cause and perception gives the empire immense autonomy. It does not need to hide. People simply look in the wrong direction. Chapter 7. What makes this system so resilient is that it evolved through competition. Every institution within it seeks survival and profit. No one orchestrates the whole. There is no council, no headquarters, no leader. Yet the interactions create a unified structure that behaves like an organism. The empire expands when markets innovate and contracts when they collapse, yet it remains intact. Nations can fall, currencies can vanish, but the system adapts. Its loyalty is to liquidity, not to countries. When a nation benefits, it is because the system found it efficient, not because it favored it. When a nation suffers, it is because the system recalibrated its priorities. Chapter 8. The question many people ask is whether this empire is good or bad. That question misses the point. It is not a moral entity. It does not choose winners or losers based on intent. It follows the logic built into its structure. If risk rises, it withdraws liquidity. If opportunity appears, it expands. Nations depend on this behavior even when they resent it. For the first time in history, the survival of states depends on forces they cannot vote for, negotiate with, or control. This reality explains why governments seem reactive, why crises feel inevitable, and why economic narratives often conflict with outcomes. Chapter 9. The future of this empire is not weakening. It is accelerating. Technology increases speed, scale, and interdependence. With digital assets, automated trading, and global settlement systems evolving beyond borders, the empire gains clarity and reach. Nations will attempt to regain control, yet the core problem remains. Political authority operates within borders. Financial authority operates outside them. The two worlds are incompatible. As long as money moves faster than laws, the empire will remain superior. Chapter 10. The most important insight is this. The empire does not hide because it does not need to defend itself. People cannot confront what they cannot perceive. The system thrives because individuals still believe the world map represents power. Yet the true map is invisible, drawn not by borders, but by flows. If the empire ever collapsed, the modern world would collapse with it. Every country depends on it more than it admits. Understanding this is not about fear but clarity. You are living in the first era where the dominant empire has no land, no king, and no symbol. It only has influence, and that influence shapes everything.